Monsters vs. Aliens is the second dystopian film released by Dreamworks Animation, and it shows that they really are stepping up their social commentary. We all remember their first attempt at this genre, Shark Tale. I didn't think that they'd be able to beat the themes about nuclear waste affecting the marine life while global warming causes sea levels to rise, giving us a double whammy of problems. I mean, that film was nominated for an Oscar after all.
So there's two things. One, disappointing people is my central trauma.
Well deserved if you ask me, but I see Monsters vs. Aliens as a step forward. It takes the bold stance that letting late-night comedians influence our politics is causing us to hurtle towards disaster. The film stars Stephen Colbert, who is elected to the highest office in the land, and it already subtly commentates on DreamWorks' continual anti-nuclear stance. I don't know any other studio who would be daring enough to make all of their characters look like nuclear test subjects, but that's how you know that this is a studio that really wants to get their point across. You have to admit, it's admirable to make your work so off-putting just to make a statement, even if you don't agree with their anti-nuclear stance. This also ties directly to the overall theme of the movie, since it speaks on what late-night comedians are built on. No one on Earth makes their work so consistently off-putting in the desperate desire to make some kind of statement, no matter what that statement actually is. But even though the movie goes really hard on this point, we see that it has some self-reflection on the position, as Stephen Colbert proves to be unable to actually make a positive difference as President of the United States. In the most beautifully articulated scene of the entire movie, we see that a giant metal minion has landed on the Earth. Then we have this huge build-up. We can see that this is going to be the emotional crux of the movie. It stretches out for as long as possible, before Stephen Colbert decides to play the Crazy Frog theme to out-annoy the giant minion. In the works of lesser animation studios like Disney or Enron, this would work as it's the easy way out and it tells a story that the audience wants to hear. But Dreamworks is the wiser animation studio. It understands that you can't beat the most annoying thing in the world, even with the other most annoying thing in the world. And so Stephen Colbert inadvertently causes disaster. You see, it's Shakespearean really. He was so confident in his opinions and his abilities, despite the nuclear tragedy that had already befallen under his watch, that he was destroyed by his own hubris, and instead he enrages the giant metal minion. This causes it to go on a rampage on San Francisco, which once again is absolutely stunning commentary. As we are all beginning to realize, following the orders and opinions of late-night comedians has directly led to the state that San Francisco is currently in. Of course, this isn't the only part of this multi-layered plot. It is called Monsters vs. Aliens after all. And if I do say so, this is probably one of my bigger critiques of the movie. Hugh Laurie puts on this very bad British accent as he plays this cockroach man.
They called me crazy, but I'll show them. I'll show them all.
It's not believable in the slightest, but I don't exactly blame this movie. It's never believable when Hugh Laurie puts on an English accent. I wish he would just stop doing that shtick and stick to his natural American accent. It's the only one he can actually seem to get right. I mean, does this laugh really sound natural?
Darwin says let him die.
BoJack Horseman also plays this missing link, which was a weird creative choice, I must admit. I would assume that a horse would play a monster more affiliated with horses, like a centaur, but I can definitely understand BoJack's fear of getting typecast. I have to assume that that might have been the cause for the disaster that was the BoJack Horseman show a couple of years back. I'm glad to see that he's still getting work though. This might actually get him out of that career slump. Also, this guy plays a tomato, which is a nice homage to my favorite monster movie, Little Shop of Horrors. There's also this giant creature, Insectosaurus, and I do need to criticize Dreamworks on this for ripping off the giant Furby joke from Mitchell's vs. the Machines. I know that Sony Pictures is the film studio that everyone wants to be, especially after their genius critique on hyper-capitalist consumer culture, but the strongest commentary just has to be original. You know, like the president being stupid. That's a point that you can make a million times and it will never get old. There's also this girl Susan. There is some great foreshadowing with her design, as she almost looks human, but not quite, letting the audience know ahead of time that she is indeed just as monstrous as the tomato or the cockroach. I like it, since it's not surprising in the slightest when she gets hit by a giant meatball from outer space and starts growing rapidly. And I have to hand it to Dreamworks on the influence of the scene. Not only was this a beautiful commentary on America's prejudice towards tall women, but it also managed to invent DeviantArt at the exact same time. This movie does have one of the most layered satires in existence, really. When Susan is brought to a prison, she meets an army general called W.R. Monger. I suppose I should mention that this film was made for children, so it's very admirable that Dreamworks would put in such hard-hitting commentary that would fly over the heads of most people watching the film. I haven't seen too many films that tried something like this. Off the top of my head, I can only think of this one, El Tigre, and Jimmy Neutron. 5. There's also the risk that such a subtle thing, naming your warmongering general W.R. Monger, would be lost on people. But if there is anything that Dreamworks as a studio does, it takes risks. No one else on Earth would make a Ratatouille about a snail wanting to be a Cars. I also love the fact that this movie introduces all of the monsters twice. Not every film would risk annoying people to accommodate those that had their memories surgically removed after watching Ants. I mean, Ants is a good movie, but I can understand that one being too much for some people, since it is one of the most intense prison films ever made.
You eat when we say you eat. You shit when we say you shit, and you piss when we say you piss. You got that, you maggot dick motherfucker?
It was also a very interesting and daring creative decision to have 2 introductions for all of the monsters and not have any character development in between them. Now, like all good monster films, Monsters vs. Aliens knows exactly what to provide its audience: relationship drama. You see, Susan used to go out with this guy, but when she got a growth spurt, he decided to break it off with her. You see the metaphor, right? Even though she's 50 feet tall, he was the true monster all along. It's not his ugly as sin appearance that proved that. It's the fact that he broke up with Susan after she nearly crushed his ribs and disappeared for a month. It is very sad, but it does have a happy end. She meets someone who is perfect for her at the ends.
My name is Norm.
I hear they're going to have 12 kids in the sequel. When is that coming out, by the way?
In the year 35.
Sweet. So then Megamind shows up. He is really annoyed that the monsters destroyed his giant metal minion, because he wanted the meatball for himself. But because Susan got pasta sauce on her, which caused her to grow, this sparks a vendetta. And then we learn that Megamind was the true monster all along. Speaking of which, this film goes deep into exploring his character. You see, Megamind needs this green glowing pasta sauce in order to take over the world. It made Susan grow 50 feet, but it allows Megamind to clone himself. And why can it do these 2 separate, unrelated things? Because the pasta sauce is just that damn good. I heard that Dreamworks served spaghetti samplers during the film's theatrical release. And before you ask, no, green spaghetti sauce is not a terrible idea. I mean, Dreamworks made the green ketchup. Why wouldn't they make the green spaghetti sauce? We all know that everyone wants to eat green sauce. It's just science. Just science. The film has a lot of themes about dualities. The pasta sauce can do 2 major things that have literally nothing to do with each other. At the same time though, Megamind is smart enough to destroy a planet, build a spaceship, become a conqueror, and yet his identical clones are stupid enough to not be able to recognize himself, and just give a gun and a keycard to imposters. It really delves into the complexity of the character. A lot more than that other Megamind movie, Jimmy Neutron. At the end, Susan decides that she wants to stay a 50-foot woman for the rest of her life, because she has learned that it is important to be yourself, no matter how impractical that is, and no matter how non-existent your previous version of normal will ever be again. And that allows her to blow up Megamind, who blasts off into the next movie. Of course, a film like this wants to hit us with the most harsh dose of reality. We learned that it was actually the president who was the real monster all along.
Stop! Don't do it! That button launches all of our nuclear missiles.
My God, man! What have you done?
In the end, it doesn't matter who we are, what we look like, or what we accomplish. Idiot politicians will always find a way to destroy our lives and everything we built. A scathing critique, I must say, stating that the United States government can't even make a latte without nuking someone, even if they have to do it to themselves. It's scathing, but convincing. I'm not usually swayed by political entertainment, but this is one of the few cases where I can really see its argument. In conclusion, I'm voting Randy Newman for president in 2024. I think we can all agree with his stance on this pressing issue way more than we can with Stephen Colbert's.
Short people got no reason to live, telling great big lies. They wear platform shoes on their nasty little feet.
Can I give all these people the finger?